All right, so we're about to write an offer, exciting stuff. Let me give you a quick overview of the agency papers that you'll likely be signing. And when I say likely, like probably 100% of the time, because the state requires you sign these before we could write an offer for you. So they better be there. So first one is a 3-page document. I'm just going to hit the high points really quick. Paragraph 1 just references the property that we are writing the offer for. The next paragraph, paragraph 2, talks about the brokerage fee. That is the commission that would be paid in association with this transaction. Unless we've had a separate conversation with you, there's no charge to you as a buyer to be using our services. Every once in a while, a buyer will be looking for something very specific and will be, digging and fighting to find what they're looking for, and they will agree to pay us a fee in addition to anything the seller pays, but that is by far the exception. Like, it's happened in 25 years a couple of times only. So typically you will expect to see a non-applicable in paragraph 2 because the seller pays the commission. Paragraph 3 talks about the protection period. Basically, any home the Metzger team shows you, you're stuck with us. Sorry, we hope you like us. I hope we like you, but you're stuck with us for that property. Paragraph 4 talks about what you as the buyer are representing. And you're representing, 5 things, I believe. Number 1, if you talk to another real estate agent, make sure you tell them you signed this agreement, because there's some things they're not allowed to do, and they could get in trouble if they didn't realize. Even if you get into it innocently, if you've signed this agreement, there's certain things other agents are not allowed to do for you. Number 2, you will give us any relevant personal or financial information to facilitate your ability to acquire the property. So for example, if you're putting a large down payment, and the seller says, great, prove that you've got this money. Give us your qualification letter. Show us the contract for your home that's under contract and that buyer's qualification. Anything relevant to the transaction that's reasonable, you'll work with us and provide that. Number 3, you'll exercise care and diligence in evaluating the physical and legal condition of the property. So by physical, they mean everything that's tangible, that's real, that you can touch, smell, see, turn on, turn off, open, close, climb on, climb under, anything like that. It's saying you're going to exercise care and diligence in evaluating that. You're going to look it over well. We highly recommend you do a home inspection. We'll talk more about that on page 9. And so anyways, make sure you check out the home you're buying, right? You don't buy a car without taking it for a test drive. Metaphorically speaking, you shouldn't buy a home without test driving it and checking out the components of the home. Number 4, you will hold us harmless from any damages or injuries while doing your inspection. So if you decide to stick your finger in the electrical panel and you get electrocuted, unless I'm there forcing your finger, which I've never done, no one on the team has ever done, so this should never happen. Or if you fall off the roof or you crawl in the attic and poke a hole through the ceiling, that's the one that happens the most, by the way. You're responsible for that during your due diligence period. Number 5, you will personally review and sign the buyer due diligence checklist. We'll get there. Number 6, you will disclose to us any other properties you're negotiating to acquire, because if you are, you may indeed have signed one of these agreements with them, and there's certain things we can't do either. So we just want to make sure everybody's on the same page there. Paragraph 5 talks about agency relationships. There's really 3 different types of agents. There's a buyer's agent, there's a seller's agent, and there's a limited agent. Buyer's agent's job is to get the buyer the lowest price, best terms, negotiate on their behalf, right? Seller's agent's job is kind of the opposite, get the seller the highest price, best terms, negotiate on their behalf. Pretty self-explanatory. Those are the easy 2. The more complicated one is what's called a limited agent. Limited agent works for both the buyer and the seller. Some states call it dual agency. Utah said, yeah, that's great, but you're limited. There's some things you just can't do. You cannot get the buyer the lowest and the seller the highest. If you're representing both, those are diametrically opposed. You can't do that. So basically what they're saying is there's some things we can and can't do. Basically, if we know you're willing to go up and the seller begs us, we can't tell them. If we know the seller is ridiculously motivated and would take your offer, but they chose to counteroffer, we can't tell you that. But the reality is if I was only working for a buyer, that seller's agent shouldn't be telling me that info either. So it doesn't change a whole lot. If we were unscrupulous, you know the word I'm trying to use. There's definitely a chance that someone could get taken advantage of, right? That's why the state wants it very clearly expressed that we're limited. However, we've been in the business, me 2.5 decades, the rest of the team combined about another 18 years combined experience. You don't stick around in a small town and have a great reputation if you're doing those things. We don't do those things. If you have more questions about limited agency, call us. We'd love to go through that with you. Paragraph 6 talks about professional advice. Interesting. We're trained to market and sell real estate. We are not a tax or legal advisor. We are not a home inspector. We are not your accountant. However, we do eat, sleep, drink, breathe real estate, so we ought to know most of the basic answers. So please do ask us. If we don't know the answer, we're going to go learn something together, because on the Metzger team, we want to continue to be growing and learning. And if there's something that's being asked by you, probably someone else is going to ask it. So we want to be able to know that answer. So we'll go research it together. But our main expertise is marketing, selling, getting to the closing table, negotiating on your behalf. Paragraph 7 talks about dispute resolution. Very similar to the paragraph that's in the purchase contract. It basically says that if there's a dispute, we're going to mediate our differences first. Paragraph 8 says sometimes mediation doesn't solve our differences and we have to go to court. No one wants to do that. But it does say that whoever goes to court and loses pays the other people's attorney fees. We've only had to use the mediation clause one time in my entire team's career. That was on a rental. Things went sideways. Renter got feisty. Owner got feisty. We ended up in mediation. Not a big deal. Basically, if I don't lie to you, you don't lie to me, there's really nothing to mediate. You might not like what I have to say. Some people don't. And I might not like what you have to say. Some people might not. But it doesn't mean we have to mediate or go to court. If no one's lying, generally that never comes onto the table. Paragraph 9 talks about what you're authorizing us to do. In addition to, of course, negotiating on your behalf and representing your best interests, you're also authorizing us to disclose after closing the terms and sales price of the property. We don't put any of your personal information, just this home, this address, these amenities, this price, so we can value similar homes in the neighborhood. It also says that even if you're on the do not call list, we have permission to call you. The FCC decided real estate agents do a significant amount of business on the phone. Therefore, we're considered telemarketers by their definition. So if you're on there, this is just saying we can call you. Don't sell your info. We don't do anything like that. We're not going to spam you. It just lets us call you even if you're on the list. And let's see. Oh yeah, Earnest Money. So your Earnest Money that you put up, which we'll talk about in a subsequent video on the purchase contract, but basically it's a sum of money you put up in earnest or good faith that the seller holds on to, but really it goes into our company's trust account. And it shows that you are committed to making the purchase. It also is a required tenet of a contract. There has to be what's called consideration. And that could be a promissory note. It could be your gold ring. Most often it's a check or cash or a wire, but money changes hands that shows we're this committed that we're willing to put up some of our money while we do our due diligence. It says that that money is going to be put into a interest-bearing trust account. Before this clause came out, we had to put it into a non-interest-bearing trust account, which meant the banks got to make the money on the interest. This goes towards affordable housing. So locally, we've given, I think, $6,000 or $8,000 to Habitat for Humanity. And then when Helper Wellington flooded, gosh, almost 7 years ago now. Anyways, we were able to give, we had $2,500. We applied for a matching grant with the National Association and we gave $27,000. Basically, we made everybody's house payment that was flooded for a month to help them out, to help get back on their feet and whatnot. So great cause, doesn't cost you anything, just allows us to put the money in there. Paragraph 10 talks about attachment. There is an attachment to this contract. It's called the sub-agency agreement. And what that silly little word means is another agent within Bridge Realty can act as a sub-agent if I'm not available. So if I'm out showing or I'm out of town or I'm on vacation or whatever the situation is, another agent within Bridge Realty, which in this case will be the Metzger team, someone from the team. We've got several licensed people. So someone from the team is going to reach out if there's a critical offer or an addendum or something that's time sensitive. You don't want to wait till I'm back. You want it taken care of. You want to be champion that way. That sub-agency addendum allows that to happen. Let's see, equal housing opportunity. We can't discriminate against you or the buyer, no matter what you are or are not. If you've got the money, welcome home. Faxes are the same as original and also electronic signatures. You might actually be signing this on DocuSign. We love DocuSign. So easy, so great. And these videos will help you actually know what you're signing. Hope you watched it. But either way, the signatures are valid. Paragraph 13 talks about the due on sale. It just says my commission is due upon the sale or any commission agreement. We don't get paid until the transaction closes. And then paragraph 14 talks about this agreement is complete, including the due diligence checklist. We'll get to that here momentarily. And we already discussed the sub-agency agreement. Next one is the buyer due diligence checklist. In my opinion, this is the most important piece of paper you're going to be signing because it basically tells you here's some things that have caused lawsuits over real estate transactions in the past. Buyer, make sure you check this home out. Here's 21 things you really should pay attention to. So, number 1, building and zoning code compliance. Basically, they're saying make sure that the lot that you're purchasing, be that a residential lot, a commercial lot, an industrial lot, is zoned for what you want to do. So, for example, if you were buying a home, but the lot was too small for the zone, you'd want to make sure that it had what's called a conditional use permit so that you can rebuild and that it meets the zoning. Otherwise, financing is really difficult and rebuilding if it were to burn down. But basically make sure that the home you're buying or the property you're buying is zoned for your intended use. Most all the time it is. Once in a while it's not. So make sure you check into that. We can help you with that, by the way. We got the zoning maps. It's not a problem. It's just a reminder, make sure you check that. Paragraph 2 is not really, applicable to Carbon and Emery County. We use this form. This is a state form that we use throughout the whole state. And there's some areas of the state where different jurisdictions limit or restrict the number of rentals within that area. So it's saying if you're thinking you're going to rent the property, make sure that it's zoned to do that. There's no restrictions here in Carbon or Emery counties about that at this time. If that changes, I'll definitely re-record this video. But for now, you probably don't need to worry about paragraph 2 unless we're selling you a property out of the area, which we do. So if you're thinking of renting it, make sure we verify with the city or the county that is allowable. Paragraph 3 talks about hazardous substances and hazardous waste and toxic substances. And it's including, but not limited to just these ones: asbestos, radon gas, lead paint, and methamphetamines, and maybe other hazardous materials. So basically it's saying, buyer, make sure that if these are concerns to you, look into it. Asbestos, usually you'll be able to see it if it's there. It'll be in the form of insulation, these little pebbles that are kind of metallic-y, shiny, almost looks like fool's gold. And they're kind of scrunchy. I don't recommend touching them, but they're squishy. Anyways, it's called Zonalite. It's an asbestos product. Asbestos is dangerous if it's inhaled, probably if you eat it too, but I don't know too many people that come by accidentally eating asbestos, but it's mostly when it's inhaled. It's also you'll see it on old ductwork. The tape is this white, I can't remember the right word, but white tape, and it is hash marked. That's it. Tape that's almost always asbestos products, sometimes in the popcorn ceiling, about 50% chance, 50% not. I've actually seen quite a bit less than the testing that has been done in this area. It's basically saying if you're concerned about these things, ask questions. Radon is a naturally occurring radioactive gas. They say that it's the second largest contributor to lung cancer, second to only to smoking, and it concentrates typically in the basement because it's just a little slightly heavier than air, and airflow is less in the basement. You're breathing a little bit of radon right now. It's like I said, naturally occurring, but if it gets above 4, you need to put a mitigation system in your house. You test for that if you're concerned about it. Lead paint, if you're built prior to 78, there's a chance it has lead paint. There's lots of things you can do to make it safer. We can give you a pamphlet that explains that, but if you're concerned, super concerned, you should have the home tested. And meth, you never know if, even if it was a grandma's house, maybe a grandchild who was troubled stayed there and used meth in the house. So it's one of those things where if you feel like you should, then you should. And it's easy to clean up now. They figured out how to do it. Unless it's a cook house that was cooked really heavy, you can clean up pretty much any meth house. So it's not as scary as it was 20 years ago when we found out that a home was a meth house. Anyways, those are some things you really should pay attention to. Paragraph 4 actually specifically talks about radon gas. It's basically saying, be aware if you're concerned, get it tested, and a mitigation system is not a big deal. It costs $1,500 to $2,500 depending on the size of the house. It takes care of it. I've never seen a system installed that didn't take care of it. Paragraph 5 talks about surveying and staking. It basically says if you're concerned about the property lines, if there's reason for concern or you just want to know, the only way to know that is to have an accurate survey. Paragraph 6 talks about home warranty plans. Basically, these cover if the fridge, the stove, the furnace, the water heater, the air conditioning unit, and some minor roofing, plumbing, electrical items, garbage disposal, for example. If they go out for 1 year after closing, you pay the copay and they come and fix it. We see it in about 90% plus of offers. The seller pays the fee typically. That's at least what is normally asked for in an offer. And if there's a problem, you call the warranty company. They fix or replace whatever it takes to get you back up and running. Paragraph 7 talks about flood zone and insurance. Basically, if you're in a flood zone, you will have to carry flood insurance, but it also goes on to say that sometimes the Army Corps of Engineers comes in and redesignates areas flood zones that weren't previous. You understand that that is a risk when you buy a home. Make sure if that's a concern to you that you check it out. Paragraph 8 talks about homeowners insurance. During your due diligence period, make sure you get a quote for homeowners insurance because lots of things affect what your cost of homeowners insurance will be. If you have marginal credit, just enough to qualify for a loan, your insurance is a little bit higher. If you've had lots of claims, your insurance will be a little bit higher. If the home's had lots of claims, your insurance could be higher. So just make sure you get a quote so you know exactly what you're looking at. Paragraph 9 talks about title issues and homeowners association. Basically, it's saying you're going to get a copy of the title report. Make sure you review the contents of it. Back previously, when it talked about in the agency agreement, the legal condition of the property, that's what they're speaking of is the title, to make sure that there's no problems with the title. Most every property will have, especially a residential home, will have an easement around the perimeter for utilities so they can get in and do what they need to do. That's why most cities have setbacks so that you can't build within that area because they may need to access it, right? And so it's just saying make sure you look that over, make sure there's no liens, no judgments, no, we've seen, power line easements and there's no power line, but they have the right to drape one over the property. Are you okay with that? Things of that nature. So just make sure you review the title report. If you have questions, always call us or the title company. We were glad to be your resources. We've looked at thousands and thousands of those, so we can answer your question on those. And if not, we'll go to the title company. We're all going to learn something new. Sometimes it's just so complicated. You're like, let's go to the title company. Let's figure this out. It also says that you understand that if there could be an HOA on the property. If it is, you agree by purchasing the property, you're bound to the terms of that HOA. So make sure you get a copy of the homeowners association document so you can make sure you're okay with it. Paragraph 10, we've sort of already covered. It just basically says, talks about the physical condition. It says, make sure that you check the condition of the property. And it goes in line items, things like the heating, the air conditioning system and components, electrical wiring, systems, appliances, roof, foundation, yada, yada, yada. It's basically saying, make sure you check the home out and all of the components because once you close, it is yours. Paragraph 11 talks about square footage and acreage. Basically, it's saying if you're concerned about the exact square footage or the acreage or the lot size, the only way to know that is to get a survey, or you can measure the home or have the appraiser measure the home for you. There's lots of different ways that you can, ascertain those figures. Typically, we use the county records, which are mostly accurate, especially the lot size. You can probably be very certain that that's going to be accurate. But there's been a couple where you're like, oh, look at that. It said 0.8, it's only 0.37 because part of it was in the roadway and exempted out at some point, but the record was never updated with that right of way subtracted out. So just make sure you check that out. Utility services. This is more for if you are buying a home. However, a lot rather than a home. However, you should make sure that the home is connected to all of those. But it's basically saying make sure if you're buying a building lot, particularly or an industrial or commercial lot, that utilities are available and what those costs and requirements to connect are, because they're always going up. I've never seen them go down. So make sure you know what you're getting into. Nobody wants a surprise after closing. We would rather you go into it with, fully knowing and understanding. Paragraph 13 talks about water. It's basically saying that if a property has a well, for sure make sure you check it out, but also make sure you're okay with the water quality. Check the water quality reports if that's of concern to you. Paragraph 14 talks about geologic conditions. This is talking about the terrain stability and suitability to build. Basically, it's saying if you're going to build a home or you're buying a home, make sure that the soil is not causing there to be gaping cracks. Check with the neighbors, check with the county, make sure what their requirements would be. Sometimes they make you over excavate and put in engineered compacted fill so that you're compensating for the soil composition. Just make sure you check it out. Paragraph 15 talks about mold. Everybody's favorite 4-letter word, mold. Just make sure if you're concerned about mold, get the home tested. Look around for the evidence. That almost every home that we're going to sell, I can guarantee you if you look around the caulking or maybe even in the ceiling in the bathroom, you're going to see a little bit of mildew. Again, if that's a concern, check it out. If you're concerned about deeper mold or you see evidence of water intrusion in the basement, etc., make sure you check that out to your satisfaction. Paragraph 16 talks again about housing compliance. You have the right to not be discriminated against. We told you already, whatever you are or are not, we don't care. If you got money, we welcome home. Let's go look at homes. Let's go look at property. We will love to take care of you. Paragraph 17 talks about property taxes. First of all, it talks about this word called greenbelt. What that is it's an agricultural assessment. If you buy an agricultural property and you make the application to keep it as an agricultural property, nothing changes except you get to keep low taxes. But when a property goes off of greenbelt, they say, that's great, you got the benefit of this tax assessment. Now you're not taking advantage of it because it really lowers the taxes substantially. They go back 4 years on that. So if it's not going to stay agricultural, make sure that we've talked about how we want to handle those taxes. Are we asking the seller to pay them? Is the buyer assuming that? Is it being split or some other variation thereof? Also, it's saying you understand when you buy a property, you're responsible for property taxes. And guess what, folks? They never go down, they go up. So just make sure you understand that and you've budgeted and you're okay and comfortable with the fact that they're going to go up at some point. Paragraph 18 talks about PIDs. What's that? Public Infrastructure District. Basically, it allows for infrastructure organizations to assess each person that's going to be using said infrastructure a fee for being a part of that system. It allows for them to collect that. And this is saying make sure that you might, if you are in one, that you understand what you're getting into, or that it's not, so you don't have to worry about it. And understand that these can also just happen. You could own a home for 10 years and all of a sudden the water district or the sewer district or the city says, we need to improve the roads, the sidewalks, here's your share. Most of the time in Utah and Carbon County, they bond for it, so it will be attached like utility bill, and your bill will go up $20, $30, $40 a month to offset that until the bond is paid off, which feels like forever because they're usually like 20-year bonds. Anyways, just if that's a concern, make sure you look into what's pending, what's been talked about. Paragraph 19 talks about income tax and legal consequences. Basically, you understand when you purchase a home, there's legal consequences. Someone could trip, break their neck, they could sue you. Tax consequences are you have to pay property taxes, but if you have a mortgage, as of now at least, those the interest you pay is tax deductible. Paragraph 20 talks about Ferpta. You don't even need to worry about what that is unless you're not a U.S. citizen. If you're not a U.S. citizen, let us know. Basically, there's certain tax laws that have to be followed on real estate sales if you are not a U.S. citizen. So if you are one, skip paragraph 20. It means nothing to you. If you are not a U.S. citizen, let us know so we make sure that we follow proper protocol. And paragraph 21 talks about energy efficiency. And it basically says by buying an older home, you understand that they are less efficient and your utility bills will be slightly increased. It says as much as 20%. Shoot, it could be 30%. But if you're buying an older home, you're usually buying an older home because that's where your price range is, or you love the older homes and you're willing to accept that because you don't want whatever the newer homes offer, be that the price range or the whatever it is. You want the charm of the old home. Just make sure you understand that older homes are not quite as efficient. If you didn't know that, surprise. Next pages here potentially would be the limited agency consent agreement. We already discussed it. It basically just goes over everything that I said and confirms who your agent or agents within Bridge Realty are. It just says there's potential conflicts. If you're not okay with those, let us know. We can assign you to somebody else and have them take great care of you. However, we prefer to work within the limited agency framework because that allows us to have control of both sides of the transaction, and typically that honestly is easier. I just realized I only printed the agreement. There's one more to print. Let me just bring it up on my screen so I've got something to follow. Okay, so the next form is the Bridge Realty equivalent of the due diligence checklist. And basically it covers the exact same stuff. The first thing it covers is square footage and acreage. It says make sure that you're happy with however that figure was obtained. If you're not, let's dig in and figure that out. Make sure that you are okay with it. Next thing is it talks about the home warranty. We already talked about the home warranty. Basically, if you're interested in one, we can provide the info, but 90% chance we've already included it in your offer because that's kind of just where the market's gone and where risk mitigation has gone. Is that's a great way to limit your risk as a seller if something goes out, and great peace of mind to the buyer who's just getting into the home if something goes bad. And appliances are weird, right? They're just a machine. They should just work. But they get used to how a household uses them. I kid you not. Water heaters work fine. New family comes in, they use it differently. The water heater's like, yeah, I'm out, dead, not going to turn on anymore. It's the craziest thing. I don't know why. It just is what it is. Maybe they're sad that their family left them, didn't take the water heater with. Who knows? But anyways, home warranties are a great protection to the buyer and the seller, actually. Next one talks about mold. We already discussed that. If you're concerned about mold, make sure that we do the appropriate testing. The next paragraph talks about asbestos. It says if you're concerned about asbestos, make sure we do the appropriate testing. And talked about a professional home inspection. We do recommend that you get one. They dig in, they do things that we don't do. They have tools that most of us don't have. It's a good idea to get a home inspection. They uncover lots of things that are of no consequence. Like he's gonna flag, or they rather, depending on who it is, will flag like if the black wire is where the white wire is supposed to be, called a reverse polarity, is gonna flag that. If there's a cracked cover plate, they're gonna flag that. But they're also gonna tell you if there's double taps in the electrical panel. They're going to run the furnace and cycle it. They're going to do a whole lot of stuff. By the way, we have a video about home inspections specifically. Make sure you watch that if you're interested in that. It's lots of great info. We actually interview a home inspector that goes over what you can expect in a report. And last but not least, that's it. If you have other questions, please do give us a call. Thanks so much for using the Metzger team. We know you made the right choice. We're excited to take great care of you. Let us know whatever questions you have. And if you know someone else that's looking to buy or sell, gosh, please send them our way. We love referrals. It's really, after 25 years, become one of the staples and backbones of our business. Thanks again for watching this video and for putting your trust in us. We look forward to a very successful negotiation, and you'll hear from us a lot. Thanks again.